The sun burned through the tall glass windows of Franklin National Bank, casting long shadows across polished marble floors. The morning rush had just begun, customers lining up, clerks tapping keyboards, and the faint hum of printers blending with murmured voices. Behind counter 3 stood Rebecca Collins, a senior teller known for her precision, efficiency, and her unspoken disdain for people she quietly deemed undeserving. When the glass door swung open, the chime announced the arrival of a tall, elderly man. His clothes were clean but worn, his step slow but steady. His name was James Carter, a retired Army veteran, his posture still carrying traces of the discipline that had defined his years in uniform. In his hand, he held a folded check, his monthly veteran's benefit, the one thing that kept his modest life afloat. Rebecca's eyes followed him from the moment he stepped inside. Something about him, his dark skin, his humble clothes, made her purse her lips and adjust her posture. When James approached her counter, he greeted her with quiet warmth. "Good morning, ma'am. I'd like to deposit this check." She didn't smile. She barely looked up. "Account number?" she asked flatly. James slid his card forward. "It should be on file, ma'am. I've been banking here for over 20 years. She took the card, typed for a moment, and frowned. "This check looks suspicious." James blinked, confused. "Suspicious? It's issued by the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs." "I see that," Rebecca said coldly, "but you'd be surprised how many people try to fake things like this. We have to protect our clients' money." There was a slight tremor in James's hand as he replied softly, "Ma'am, I served in the Army for 24 years. I've never faked anything in my life." But Rebecca didn't care. In her mind, she had already judged him, an old black man trying to deposit a government check. She looked around. A few customers had noticed. Whispers began. James shifted awkwardly, feeling the sting of humiliation rising in his chest. "Please, it's a legitimate check." She leaned back, sighed dramatically, then tore the check in half. The sound of paper ripping cut through the air like a scream. Gasps echoed from nearby customers. James froze. For a second, he thought he hadn't heard it right, that maybe it was just the noise of the printer behind her. But then he saw the torn pieces in her hand. His heart sank. "You can't do that," he said, his voice breaking slightly. That was my only—" Rebecca smiled coldly. "Sir, I'm protecting this bank from fraud. If you really are who you say you are, you can have the VA issue you a new one. Next!" He stood there, motionless. The humiliation was worse than any wound he had suffered in battle. The people in line stared, some with pity, some in silence, others pretending not to notice. "Ma'am," James whispered, "that check was my rent, my medication. Please." "Security," she said, waving her hand. "Ma'am." The guard, a young man barely out of high school, hesitated. Rebecca, maybe we should just—" "She said now," she snapped. James looks down. His eyes watered, not out of weakness, but because he couldn't understand how a country he had fought for could treat him like this. As the guard gently placed a hand on his shoulder, James picked up his torn check pieces and walked out quietly. The entire lobby was silent. Rebecca adjusted her blouse, proud of herself for doing the right thing. She had no idea that within the next few minutes, her entire life and the reputation of the bank was about to change forever.
Outside, the air was sharp and cold. James Carter stood beneath the flagpole in front of the bank, the same flag he'd saluted for half his life, clutching the torn halves of his check. For a moment, he couldn't move. His breath trembled, his chest ached, and memories of the battlefield flickered in his mind. He had faced enemies, hunger, and storms, but never this kind of cruelty from his own people. A young woman named Alicia Green, who had been in line behind him, rushed out after him. "Sir, sir, wait!" she called. She was in her late 20s, dressed in office attire, a bank customer who had watched the entire scene unfold. James turned slowly. "That wasn't right," she said, her voice shaking with anger. "What she did to you, that was racist and illegal. I recorded everything." He blinked. "Recorded?" "Yes, on my phone." She held up her screen, showing the moment Rebecca ripped the check and called security. "You deserve justice, Mr. Carter. James Carter." Alicia nodded firmly. "Mr. Carter, let's make sure they can't get away with this." Within minutes, Alicia's video was uploaded to her social media with the caption, "A black veteran had his VA check ripped up by a racist blank teller. This is America in 2025. The video spread like wildfire. Within an hour, thousands had viewed it. By lunchtime, millions. News channels picked it up. The bank's logo was visible in the background, and the name Franklin National Bank started trending for all the wrong reasons. Inside, Rebecca was still unaware. She was sipping her coffee, talking to her coworker about how some people just don't belong in certain banks. Then the branch manager, David Monroe, stormed out of his office. "Rebecca, my office now." She frowned. "Is this about that man earlier? Because I followed procedure." "Now," he repeated, his tone sharp. Rebecca followed him, confused. Inside his office, he slammed his tablet onto the desk. A video was playing, her face on camera, her voice clear, her hands tearing the check. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" David said, his voice low but furious. "This is all over the internet. The corporate office is calling me every 5 minutes. Reporters are outside." Rebecca's color drained. "Wait, what? Someone recorded that?" "Yes, and now the entire country thinks we're a racist bank. Do you even realize who that man was?" She stammered, "Some fraud, pretending to be—" "He's Sergeant Major James Carter. He served 3 tours overseas. He's a decorated veteran with a silver star." The words hit her like a slap. David continued, "He's been our client since 2001. His name's on our veterans wall in the lobby. You didn't even check his file." Rebecca felt her throat tighten. I didn't know." "You didn't care," he shot back. "And now corporate wants answers, immediately." By the time she stepped out of his office, the lobby was full of reporters. Cameras flashed. Protesters had gathered outside, holding signs that read, "Respect Black Veterans" and "Justice for James." Rebecca tried to slip out the side door, but someone shouted, "That's her!" Cameras turned. Questions flew. "Why'd you rip his check? Do you hate black veterans? Are you going to apologize?" She pushed past them, face flushed, trembling. Meanwhile, James sat quietly in a small diner nearby. His phone buzzed nonstop. Messages from strangers, veterans groups, and reporters, all wanting to talk to him. But he didn't want fame. He wanted dignity. Alicia sat across from him. "Mr. Carter, you should at least let someone represent you. The bank owes you an apology, and more than that, they owe you justice." James sighed. "Justice doesn't fix broken hearts, ma'am." Just then his phone rang again. It was an unknown number. "Mr. Carter," a professional voice said, "this is Lynn Patterson, CEO of Franklin National Bank. I've just seen what happened. On behalf of the entire institution, I want to personally apologize. We're arranging a full public statement, and we would like to meet you." James paused. "Meet me?" "Yes, today, if possible." Alicia nodded, encouraging him silently. "All right," he said finally. "I'll come." By the time James returned to the bank that afternoon, the atmosphere had completely changed. The protesters clapped as he walked in. The same security guard who'd escorted him out earlier now held the door open respectfully. Inside, every employee stood in silence. Cameras were rolling. The CEO herself stood in the center, waiting. Rebecca was there too, pale, shaking, tears in her eyes. Lynn stepped forward. "Mr. Carter," she said solemnly, "on behalf of Franklin National Bank, I want to offer you our deepest apologies. What happened this morning was unacceptable and against every value we stand for. Ms. Collins' actions do not represent this bank or this country." Rebecca swallowed hard. "Mr. Carter," she whispered, "I don't expect forgiveness. I was wrong. I saw you, but I didn't see you. I let my bias blind me. I can't undo what I did, but I am truly deeply sorry." James looked at her for a long moment. His eyes were calm, tired, but kind. "Miss, I've seen a lot of hate in my life, but I've also learned that forgiveness is a weapon stronger than anger. You hurt me, yes, but maybe this moment can teach more people than we'll ever know." Rebecca broke down crying. Reporters captured every second. That night, the video of his calm forgiveness went even more viral than the first one. Millions shared it with captions like, "Grace under fire." But the story wasn't over yet, because what happened the next morning, in a courtroom packed with reporters, would shock everyone, even James
himself. The next morning, sunlight spilled through the courthouse windows like gold. The place was packed. Reporters, veterans, students, and ordinary citizens who had all followed the viral story that had shaken the country. At the front, sitting quietly in his old suit, was James Carter. His calm presence filled the room. On the other side sat Rebecca Collins, her lawyer whispering nervously beside her. She hadn't slept all night. Her face was pale, her eyes swollen from tears. The hearing wasn't a criminal trial. It was a public restitution meeting, arranged by the bank and the Department of Veterans Affairs to formally resolve the incident. But to Rebecca, it felt like standing before the entire nation. The judge entered. Cameras went silent. The room stilled. "Mr. Carter," the judge said gently, "we are all deeply sorry for what happened to you. Before we proceed, do you have anything you'd like to say?" James stood slowly. Every movement was deliberate, steady, the way soldiers move when they carry the weight of years on their shoulders. He cleared his throat. "Your Honor, I came here today not to shame anyone, but to speak the truth." He turned to Rebecca. "When that young woman tore my check, I felt smaller than I ever did in war. Not because of the money, but because of what it meant. It meant someone saw me as less than human after everything I gave to this country." He paused, his voice trembling slightly. "But I also know hate doesn't heal hate. It never has. What heals this world is grace and accountability." The judge nodded. "Thank you, Mr. Carter." Then came the bank's CEO, Lynn Patterson. "Your Honor, we've reviewed the incident. The check Mr. Carter brought in was authentic, issued directly by the VA. But there's something we didn't know until last night." The room leaned in. "That check wasn't a standard monthly benefit," she said, unfolding a copy of the document. "It was a special compensation payment, a one-time recognition bonus for lifetime service and bravery. It amounted to $450,000. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Cameras flashed. Rebecca's eyes widened in disbelief. Her breath caught in her throat. She had torn up almost $500,000 and humiliated the man it belonged to. The judge exhaled slowly. So not only was Mr. Carter wronged, he was robbed of a once-in-a-lifetime recognition. Rebecca couldn't look up. Her hands shook violently. Lynn continued, "The bank will fully restore Mr. Carter's payment, along with a public compensation of $2 million for emotional and reputational damage. And starting today, we are launching a Veteran Equity Scholarship Fund in his name, the James Carter Foundation, to support underprivileged veterans across America." The entire courtroom erupted into applause, but James raised his hand. The room fell silent. "Your Honor," he said, turning to Rebecca again, "I don't want her life destroyed. What she did was wrong, but let her actions serve as a lesson, not a curse." He turned toward the crowd. "I want her to work for the foundation, side by side with veterans she once judged. Let her see who we really are." Rebecca gasped softly. Her tears ran down her cheeks. You'd let me do that?" He nodded gently. "We don't heal by dividing further. We heal by understanding." The judge smiled faintly. "Mr. Carter, you may have just given this court something greater than justice. You've given it humanity." The gavel struck. Case closed. That night, news stations across the country replayed the moment on loop. The veteran forgiving the woman who had humiliated him, not out of weakness, but out of strength. Clips of James speaking about unity went viral under the hashtag #WeSeeYou, a movement that soon became national. People of all races began sharing stories of kindness, respect, and empathy. And Rebecca? She didn't vanish from the spotlight. She started working for the James Carter Foundation as an outreach coordinator. Every day she met veterans, families, and people she had once silently judged. She listened, she learned, and slowly she changed. 1 year later, on Veterans Day, she stood beside James on a small stage in front of a waving crowd. The foundation had just opened its 10th branch. Rebecca took the microphone, her voice soft but steady. "A year ago, I made a mistake that showed the world how blind hate can be. But this man, this soldier, showed me what real strength looks like. Forgiveness is not easy, but it is powerful." She looked at James and smiled. "You gave me back my humanity when I least deserved it." James placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "And you gave the world an example of what redemption looks like." The crowd cheered, flags waved. As the band began to play "God Bless America," the camera zoomed out, capturing a black veteran and a woman who had once judged him, standing side by side underneath a sky painted in red, white, and blue. And as the music swelled, a simple line appeared on the broadcast screen. "Hate divides, forgiveness rebuilds."